Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs and share our experience to hopefully help you have your best game. Thanks as always for listening to Fluff and Crunch. Today, I am doing a solo episode because here we are in mid-December, and I know that in the next couple of weeks, things are going to get quite busy. I know this for a fact because of some great things that are happening in my family, in addition to just Christmas and New Year's. So I figured, it would probably be a good idea to record an episode so that just in case James and I don't have some content, there's some content. So what I'm going to do today is a short review of the Vaesen Nordic horror role-playing game quick starter, or starter set rather, which I picked up on a Black Friday sale, and then I ran the one adventure in this last weekend. I didn't have everyone available for my Star Trek Adventures group, and since we only have one session left, I wasn't going to run it with a person down and then have them lose out on the end of the season, if you want to call it that. So I had picked this up because I'd seen it around. Now, if you haven't seen it, Vaesen, Vaesen, and I'll put links to the Free League's website, specifically the site where Vaesen is addressed and the starter box is explained. It is a Nordic horror role-playing game. So investigative horror, folklore, and it is in the late 1800s, the late 19th century, and it is based in Scandinavia. It's based in Sweden, at least this starter box. The short adventure in it takes place in Sweden. Now, I know nothing about Nordic folklore or ghost stories or beasties or things like that. So I'm coming to this with only the foggiest notion. Like, I went to Epcot years ago and I visited the Norway pavilion, and the ride there had trolls in it, like little short trolls. So that's all the experience I have with like Nordic folklore and horror and stuff like that. So I figured I'd heard some interesting things about it. I'd seen a session or two run at the local game convention that I attended a few months ago. And so I thought, Black Friday sale. Yeah, sure, I'll pick it up. I picked up another starter box to a separate game, and I'll run that at some point and do a review of it as well. But this one just fit really well into the schedule. So here I go. Let me address first off the objective bits and bobs of this. That is, what is in the box? Okay, so the box, and I'm paraphrasing and in part reading off the back of the box, which is sitting in front of me. It contains condensed rules for action skill tests, combat, damage, and fear. It has a complete introductory adventure. It has a book called the Codex Occultum, which is a secret journal that has all kinds of information about Vaesen. And Vaesen are the ghosts, the monsters, the weird fae, the things like that you are investigating, dealing with, maybe fighting. There are 5 pre-generated characters, and these are 2-sided character sheets. One side has all the mechanical aspects of the character, and the other side has mostly narrative and background and an image. There is a large full-color map of the mythic North, depicting Norway and Sweden and parts of Denmark. And then on the other side is the city of Uppsala, which is where this story takes place. One thing, and this is an aside, every Free League product that I've had, every Free League box that I've had or seen has had really excellent maps and well made too. They're thick. The paper is thick. They're not like that kind of crappy, flimsy, shiny paper you see sometimes. But this comes with a 2-sided map for that. Okay. There is a map of the location, which for the adventure, which is Castle Gillenkreuz. There are some handout sheets. These they're in-game artifacts like letters and things that your characters will encounter during the adventure, and they're written in script, which is kind of a nice touch. There are 5 rules reference cards that are, they're not full size, like 8.5 by 11. They're smaller, they're cardstock, and they have a very nice, they condense the rules and the different ways that the rules work in 2 sides. And then it also comes with 10 initiative cards. I'll talk about what that means in a moment if you're not familiar, and 10 engraved custom dice for the game. Okay. Now, when I got this thing home and I opened it, I realized, and I'll admit, initially I was a little disappointed and I felt a little stupid. Now, Free League has its own in-house system. You know, they use this D6 dice pool system where you add there are 4 attributes, and then there are usually 3 skills nested under each of the attributes. You add your attribute number and your skill number, and you roll that many die 6s, and however many 6s you get, as long as you get at least 1 6, that is typically a success. This is what sits underneath Alien and Coriolis and Mutant Year Zero. It is not the same as the step die system that's used with Twilight 2000, but most of Free League's games use this house system. Now, Free League they do promote and they sell games that are made by other people that don't use their house system. And for some reason, I thought that Vaesen was one of those. And I was wrong. Now, I am not the world's biggest fan of the die 6 dice pool system, wherein you have to roll 6s, any 6s, to be successful. When you're only rolling maybe 4 or 5 dice, you're not successful all that often. Now, I'm not one of these who insists on the characters always being superpowered and always kicking ass, but my experience with this system, different as in using it with different games that use this system, is that sometimes it's really hard to be successful, and the mechanic, the probability of the mechanic ends up, in my opinion, detracting from the way the game, like the story, flows. Now, all of these, and I'll focus just on Vaesen's modifications of the rules from here forward, all of these systems in Vaesen as well has a mechanic called push. You can push a roll. So when you roll your, let's say, 6 die 6s to try to do something, if you don't roll any 6s, you fail, you can decide to push. And what that means is you pick up every die that isn't a 6 and you re-roll your hand. Okay, great. So you could just roll a bunch of crap again and not be successful. Or you could be successful and, all right, now you've done what you need to do. When you push a roll, you accept what's called a condition. And there are mental conditions and there are physical conditions. And once you have 3 conditions, you're defeated, you're knocked out. You're either gibbering in the corner or you're unconscious, something like that. Now, the quick start rules are explicit in saying that the named conditions that are on the character sheet, and there's angry, scared, petrified. There's a couple of different ones you can check off. They are only for flavor purposes. They have no mechanical oomph at all. They're just there to maybe guide you in how you want to play your character as your character gets a little bit beat up, used up, exhausted by circumstances. So when you push a roll, you accept a condition because you're giving up, you're taking a risk to try to be successful when you weren't. Vaesen differs from the other Free League dice pool systems or games that I've played in that sometimes it takes more than 1 6 to be successful. Those instances are clearly marked in the starter adventure. So the system itself is super simple, okay? Again, you're adding 2 numbers together, 2 low single-digit numbers. One represents your attribute, one represents your skill. And the skills, again, are nested under the attributes. They are not interoperable. They're not. You can't take a skill that sits under one attribute and use it with another one. But you're going to add those 2 low single-digit numbers together. You're going to roll the dice, and as long as you get 1 6, in most cases, you are successful. Damage in combat is very, very simple. Every weapon has a damage rating, and that damage rating is the number of conditions you inflict on a target when you successfully hit it. Now remember, 3 conditions, and a target is defeated. It's actually really easy. Let's say you have a gun, and it has a damage of 2. So you shoot someone, they take on 2 conditions. Well, if you roll extra successes, you can add those to damage. So it's really easy to shoot someone and knock them out, to defeat them right away. And I thought that was clever. There are no dice. There are no damage dice to roll. It's just a flat number. And essentially, with the possibility of you rolling additional successes, sixes, the degree of success matters to the amount of damage you do. Now, initiative. I mentioned that it comes with a deck of 10 initiative cards, and they are numbered 1 through 10. You shuffle those at the beginning of initiative, at the beginning of a combat encounter, when sequence matters. You randomly hand those out to everyone, including yourself, and you go in order from lowest to highest. There are some character abilities, like I had one of the characters in the set has military experience, and so he is able to draw 2 cards, and he takes the one that he wants. Players can trade cards among themselves. But otherwise, it is a very simple, fast initiative system. Now, and this, by the way, is the norm in the free league dice pool systems. It does take away the idea of like, hey, I have some special ability and I'm going to roll higher and go first. But they make up for that to an extent by having character abilities that enable you to do something like draw 2 cards. And that's the only of those that pops up in this starter set. So the rules in the starter box are under 20 pages. You can blow through these in under a half an hour and be able to run the game. The module, or the adventure rather, is only a little bit longer and makes use of the 3 in-game artifacts, the letters that the characters will probably find, and then the Codex Occultum, the book with it's like the Winchester Father's Journal from Supernatural. It's got like, this is how to recognize if this is what you're seeing, it's probably this, and this is maybe how to defeat it, and how to recognize and defeat the creature that they're dealing with in the adventure is in the book. And it was actually neat to see my players put that to use. Now, let me talk for a little bit about the adventure itself, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So the adventure is short, okay? It is probably a 3 to 4 hour adventure at most. I think if you ran it for longer than that, you are either extraordinarily slow, your players are pondering too much, or you're dragging it out. Like there's enough meat, but there isn't anything beyond that. That's it. And I'm guessing on this that Free League put this together truly as a teaser. Like, hey, we're going to show you the basics of how this game functions, and we're going to give you a couple of the story and mechanical connective highlights, like this Codex Occultum, which members of the Society, which is this society that looks after and hunts down and deals with Vaesen, that the characters get drawn into. You have this in-game artifact that actually feeds into, call it, the mechanical behavior of the players through their characters. And I think what Free League is trying to do is very straightforward, get right to it, show you, here are some of the cool things about this world and the rules that we have put together to enable you to play in it. And in that respect, it does a good job. This is not like, the 5e starter box from almost like a decade ago, where you had, the Lost Mines of Phandelver was like, you got a lot of mileage out of that. That was multi-session. And in fact, most starter boxes, it seems to me now, they give you a several session adventure. And I mean, some of them even give you, if in level-based games or in games where skill growth or some kind of experience system is relevant, they'll give you a little taste of that, so you can not only see how the game works in different situations because you're playing it longer, but you actually get to see the characters you're playing grow a little bit, albeit within the limits of we're not giving you the full rules starter box. There is none of that in this. It worked really well for about a 3-hour session. It worked really well. It filled the time. It didn't ever feel like we were dragging. nor did it feel like we were having to rush to get it done because we knew like we're not going to play this, play it for 3.5, 4 hours and then play it for an hour next week. That doesn't work. So in that respect, it's good. Now, where I felt a little, I don't know, not frustrated, but I'll say let down, is that there were a number of things on the character sheets, mechanical things, and comments about each of the different pre-gens backgrounds that clearly have mechanical implications or strong story implications. I mean, there were some things, there were like stats related to numbers related to equipment or items that the characters had, and not that stuff isn't even mentioned. It's not even not mentioned in the rules. It's like it would have been nice to have a page in the rule book that shows a diagram of the character sheet and points to all the different pieces and parts of it and says, this is discussed in here, this is discussed in, and they give you like one sentence that gives you some indication of what that means, so maybe you care about it, and then says, this is explained in the full rules, which is still a teaser and encouraging you to buy the full rules. Like, for example, one of the characters is listed as like secretly, you're actually a changeling. I have no idea what that means within the setting and the game of Vaesen. It also said that character had spent a week in a troll's bag. Like, I have no idea what that means at all. Now, and here's where I have a little bit of a problem, or it's a little disappointing, is that clearly Free League is dangling these pieces of their world and their game in front of you, but they're not giving you any indication whatsoever about what you might get more about those things if you get the full book. I wish that and like I said, I think the rule book is like 14 pages long. I mean, it is extraordinarily thin, just stapled. I think they could have given a couple extra pages to make the characters fully playable for what's on the character sheets. Don't put stuff on a character sheet that I can't do anything with because I have no idea what the rules are that are connected to them. I can't experience the coolness of your system and of your world if you just give me unknowns and you don't give me anything to go off of. So I think that was a failure. On their part. I think that they missed the boat. They should have included these things. I think it would have, even if you wouldn't have been able to do a whole lot story-wise with these characters in this very limited adventure, I think it still would have given me and the players a better sense of like, oh yeah, here are the cool things that are in this game. That said, I actually think that's pretty minor because what I think the game sets out to do is introduce you to the basics of the world and the game. And to do that through a story that I assume the designers believe is a great example of the world and the game coming together. And in that respect, I think it was successful. If you're interested in a horror game that, because it's set in a place that I'm assuming the vast majority of us know very little about, folklore-wise, and the background of the region and the peoples and things like that, if that deliberate disconnect from the norms of like, oh, it's America in the 1930s, and no, none of us lived then, but there's still a sense of like, well, I kind of know what it was like. You want something that is completely separate from that in hopes of having a different gameplay and story experience. I think this would do a nice job. If you are interested in a horror game that picks at things in folklore, again, about which we know very little, and then therefore would be potentially fresh, I think this offers a lot of that. Looking through this Codex Occultum of all these different beasties, I could see, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here I've never heard of, or like Nordic folklore views on ghosts or fairies or things like that are different from like my background. So I was like, okay, that's cool. It's fresh and new. And then lastly, the system worked. As I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of the D6 dice pool system. I played a decent length story arc of Mutant Year Zero and wasn't super hip on the way the system functioned. I've played and run a decent amount of Alien First Edition, and I really don't like it. I don't like how it works. I have no idea what Second Edition offers. All that said, it worked the changes they made for Vaesen worked. The push mechanic still leaves you with no other option. If you fail and you try again, it's possible that you could fail and end up worse off than you started. There is, at least what was presented in the rules in the starter box, there is no way, like with 2d20, to increase your likelihood of success before you roll. The push mechanic is entirely reactive. It doesn't allow you to be proactive. There isn't anything you can do, at least, like I said, that I found in the starter box, that would, before you roll the dice, improve your chances of being successful. The changes with the conditions and the flat damage and how those just become conditions, and so you're just counting how many conditions you have until you're knocked out, I thought was very simple. It made the gameplay, especially when there were action scenes, flow really quickly. The bookkeeping at the table was really simple, which I think for mood-heavy games, and horror games to me are really mood-heavy. They're so dependent on trying to on establishing the right mood and then keeping it there to be satisfying. The last thing you want to do is bookkeeping or flipping through a rule book trying to figure out some complex rules. That destroys the mood. And I could see where perhaps Vaesen, by being simple and streamlined and coherent, would enable you to focus on the mood and stay there instead of lose the illusion of the made-up stuff. My final thought on this, and this is as I look at the back of the box, and it says 10 engraved custom dice for the game. They're nice little D6s, kind of like a cream color with some funky looking numbers, and then a symbol for the number 6, letting you know that's what you rolled, that's what you need to roll to be successful. And I realized this actually when I ran the game last week, and I'm reminded of it looking here. In a game where only a 6 yields a success, you don't need numbers 1 through 5. Why not just have a die with 5 blank sides and something on one of the sides that means success, some little symbol or something like that, or a big S, I don't know, and do that. You don't care about 3 or 2. You only care about 6. So that's kind of silly, but that's life. Anyway, if you're interested in this, the links are in the notes to Freely's website. I'm sure you could find it at game stores. I know you can find Vaesen stuff on Amazon. And I'll say in closing that I am seriously considering picking up the full rules, because I think it might be a good 1 or 2 session now and again palate cleanser, as I'm a fan of doing, between either long campaigns or major segments of long campaigns. It's nice to step out of the thing you've been in for a while and do something that is not only different genre, but therefore story, and also mechanically, just to blow the dust off the sameness of something you've been playing for months on end. I think this could be a good one of those. So anyway, thank you for listening, and wherever this drops during the Christmas season and New Year's season, I hope you're having a fabulous day and great holidays. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes.